This video is going to be more of a discussion. In the section on split graphs, you are asked to draw a number of graphs and then to answer some questions related to those functions. In this example that I've got over here, I have already drawn the function for you. The function is the split function of f of x, and you can see that it has been split into 5 different parts. Each of these parts can only be drawn on the section of the domain that has been allowed. So let's first just take a look how I drew this graph. The first part that you've got is that when x was minus 2, y was minus 1, and you can see that I have drawn that point in as indicated. Then for all the values of x that are less than minus 2, so in other words, I could not include the point when x was minus 2 in this part of the curve, but for all the other points that were less than minus 2, I drew my split function using the expression 2x plus 8. Moving on to the third part, you can see that I have drawn a decreasing exponential function, and that can only be drawn between the values when x is minus 2 and x is 0. As I wasn't allowed to use minus 2 or 0 for this part of the function, I have open circles at those two x values to indicate that they have been excluded. Then from when x is 0, still not including 0, all the way up until when x was 3, and also excluding when x is 3, I've drawn an absolute value. This absolute value just had a horizontal shift, 1 unit to the right. And lastly, from when x is 3 and including that value, my part of the split function is going to be when y is equal to 4. So that's a horizontal line moving towards when x is infinity along the line of 4. The first question that we've been asked is to tell the range for the split function. Well, you can see by looking very carefully that the range starts up here when y is 4, and it can go all the way down until negative infinity. When we write the range, we write it from the smallest value to the biggest value. So if we fill in that answer, it's going to look as follows. Remember, when I do the range, I use my y values, and so we're going to say that y could have been an element starting at negative infinity and going all the way up till 4. As I drew the line when y was 4, 4 is an included value. Moving on to the next question, we're asked to find the zeros for the graph. Well, the zeros for the graph are on the line when y is equal to 0. In other words, we have 2 zeros, and that is going to be when x is going to be minus 4, and again when x is going to be 1. In the third part of the question, we asked to put a letter where we could read off f of minus 1. Now that must be the point when the x value is minus 1. So if we put a letter in line with minus 1, touching my graph, my letter would have been over here. And so I'm going to indicate that point with the letter A. Next, they ask me what the graph is going to tend to when x is minus 2. Now that means that if I take my hand and I follow the graph from the left or from the right, and I follow the curve of the graph, what would the y value have been if I had assumed a y value? Can you see that as I trace my finger along the curve, and I'm going to do this with a highlighter pen, from the left, my finger would have traced along here. From the right, my finger would have traced along here. So you can see that the value that I am tending towards is going to be when y is 4. But what is the actual value at f at minus 2? The answer is -1. In the next question, I'm asked to find f at 0. Well, when x is 0, I have an open hole for y. In other words, it is undefined when x is 0. But what is my graph tending towards when x is 0? If I repeat the exercise that I did before, let's do it in green this time. As I tend towards my x equals 0 from the left, it looks like I'm coming towards 1. As I tend towards when x is equal to 0 from the right, it also looks like I'm coming to 1. So my graph is tending towards a height of 1 when x is 0. Next, I have to take a look and see what f of 1 is going to be. Well, when x is 1, then y is 0. As I tend towards when x is 1, both from the left or from the right, I'm in fact also going to get to that same answer that y is going to be 0. So I reach a height of y being 0 when x is 1. And lastly, when I take a look when I have f of 3, the answer is going to be 4 for the y value. But do I have a limit when x is going to be 3? If I do the same as I've done before, and I move on my curve towards the value when x is 3 from the left, and then I move towards the value when x is going to be 3 from the right, am I arriving at the same height? Clearly, there's a gap between these two, and so there is a jump from the one part to the other part. From the left, I tend towards a height of 2. From the right, I have a height of 4. And as they are not coming to the same height, there is not a limit when x is going to be 3. You can now continue trying to answer the questions for the other split curves so that you can analyze the graphs that you've been given.